Thank you. I see that hello, good afternoon. Jan Meyer, I'm from SICT. No one knows what SICT is. It's the national service provider for R&E in Norway. I'm also the co-chair of the EOSC. Up. It sounds really loud. Is that, okay. I'm also the co-chair of the Task Force for Sustainability of EOSC, but over here, I'm presenting with effectively a géant hat and 10 years of experience in making commercial services available to R&E. And how do you do that? I shouldn't push the red button, should I? No, because then it turns. Okay. I'm going to try and walk you very quickly through lessons learned of 10 years of collective effort in making commercial services available. We're going to have another presentation from Serve that shows, well, so why is it interesting to do this for the researcher, right? What have they done concretely? And Olaf Pascoe from Giant is going to talk about where is the market moving to, the commercial services market, as far as we have an overview, and some reflections on what does that mean, and what are trends that we, because of our behavior as a collective, are stimulating. So the premise for the work that we've done is commercial services need to be a standard part of the researcher's toolkit. They serve a purpose. And in order to facilitate that, a collective approach brings benefits. And those benefits are typically twofold. There again, based on the premise that everything becomes stuff as a service, which means that if you buy it in France or in Greece, it's going to be the same product. That means that you can unburden thousands of institutions by doing one procurement instead of thousands or 40 countrywide. And through joint action, because the services are delivered over a very wide geography, the suppliers tend to be relatively big. If you rock up as a single institution, they're just going to point you to the standard catalog. If you talk to Microsoft about discounts, they're going to do the same unless you come with sufficient demand. And that demand has to increase over time. So joint action to actually extract some concessions from them. So that's the premise. What have we done? We started this way back in roughly 2012, but in 2016, Giant actually did the first generation of joint procurement with about 40 countries. Had not really been done before. Worked out quite nicely, and I think at the end of the day, what was it, maybe 15 countries, I think, saw actual usage of this. Through the Okra project from 2019 to 2022, we had an opportunity to do this in the context of EOSC. And in that project, we did the second generation of that procurement for infrastructure cloud, right? Procurement lasts for 4 years, so you have to refresh that all the time. We had the opportunity to investigate another service type, Earth observation services. We had a pot of money made kindly available by the European Commission, but unfortunately the Commission liaison has just left the room. So we had 9 million euros available to stimulate the adoption of these services. Why is that needed? Because in our sector there is a lot of skepticism for using commercial services. There are various reasons for that. One simple reason might even be because we're just not used to it anymore. And we had the opportunity to figure out, okay, so how do you generalize these mechanisms? I got involved in this not because I like procurement. I got involved in this because I know how hard it is, and I would like to turn it from a South Pole expedition, right? This is the people that have done it, they're either dead or never want to do it again. You want to turn it into container shipping, something that is predictable timeline, budget, outcome. So generalize these mechanisms. In EOSC Future, we built on that. We worked on assessing demand for adding to that portfolio of services. We investigated, right, so what is actually the value proposition that we're delivering here? How can you summarize it in a very short story? Stimulate, again, the uptake of the portfolio of commercial services, which by and large consisted of the Okra agreements. Investigate data procurement. Is that a different beast than cloud services? And I didn't press the red button. And develop I call it here fit for purpose mechanisms for managing that portfolio of commercial services. Because at the end of the day, let's see, if you want to conceptually make commercial digital services available through the EOSC marketplace to those 1 million researchers through 5,000 institutions in 40 countries, you would think that it's a matter of just slotting them into the exchange. And we'd argue that no, it doesn't work like that. As long as these institutions, by and large, are public sector institutions, the procurement directive says no. So under the current way that we're organized, you need to do that procurement. There's no way around that. So effectively, the Public Procurement Act has a gating process for services to become part of EOSC's portfolio of commercial services. And we're arguing that doing that gating process together is a lot more effective than doing it separately. What you then get, right, conceptually, is from an institution's point of view, you can point your researchers to that portfolio of agreements with commercial services and say, if you need a commercial service to do your research, if it's there, then we know it's a good deal. We know that there are no terms and conditions that are negative for us, so you're good to go as long as you have the budget, right? Where you get the budget from to consume this, that's a different question. A researcher can point to their institution's administration and say, stop standing in my way, I need the service, I have the money, the agreement is there, just sign the thing so I can be on my way. And for people like research infrastructures, infrastructure providers, you can unburden the researcher, so you can add to your own value proposition by saying, look, if you want access to these relatively complicated things, I can help you do that so that you can get on with your science. So it looks like a win-win. Benefits for EOSC as a whole. Collective agreements ought to make it a lot easier to integrate these services with the EOSC technical platform as it evolves. I know it's a pretty virtual concept at the moment, but once that EOSC procurement is done, we actually have a technical platform that you can integrate with, and there's a cost to that, so that's going to be easier to do. Good terms and conditions, collective buying power, right, to get those better terms and conditions. And with a bit of luck, we can actually do something useful around digital sovereignty, but perhaps Olaf is going to say a bit more about that. So what did this lead to? I'm just pointing out here for the infrastructure cloud, because that's the most visible one. Over the course of the years, we're now moving in the direction of 100 million euros total consumption over all the participating countries, and about 900 institutions. There's not going to be more countries in this round because the procurement directive is not recognized in all the countries. So that's one of the lessons learned. I'll get back to that. One thing to point out is, well, if you have 900 effectively customers, institutions that rely on this stuff, you need to plan ahead, and you need to plan ahead for how you're going to support that. When we did the math, it looked like delivering this as a collective costs about €1 million a year. If you look at the whole procurement exercise, making the things available, doing all the contract management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that seems what it boils down to. That money has to come from somewhere. You also need to look quite far ahead, because we're now working on the follow-up of the OCRA agreement so that it is ready at the end of 2024. The planning for that happened 1.5 years ago, I think. So effectively, we started the planning of the next generation framework when the current one had been released for half a year. And that obviously has an impact for how you organize these things in EOSC. We did adoption funding, right? That was very interesting, because that really demonstrated that the demand is out there, despite many people saying it is not. The researchers apparently disagreed. We got 130 project proposals for both IaaS and Earth observation services, many countries represented, and effectively all research disciplines represented. And it was fascinating to see what people wanted to use the services for, but by and large, it was flexibility, scaling, Flexibility points to the inflexibility of, for example, HPC with their regular allocation cycles. It's like, no, we want something more flexible than that. It's a desire for having resources at a certain point in time and then just throwing them away, and access to resources that you otherwise couldn't have. And I think you're going to say something about that as well. Yeah, so a couple of lessons learned. The demand is definitely there. We can address it collectively and it makes sense. So the premise seems to hold, so that's good. But it is really, really hard work, and it is quite complicated and specialized work. And you need a combination of procurement knowledge, domain knowledge about how stuff is actually delivered in our sector at scale, and you need to sustain that over time. And it's not something that you acquire overnight. It took us 10 years to build up this capability. We don't yet know how to actually properly assess demand for other services. Infrastructure cloud was the easy one because everyone needs it. But other types of services, we've tried a couple of approaches in EOSC Future, and it's, well, elusive is the diplomatic word, but it's hard to get an actionable answer, and you need an actionable answer before you start a collective procurement process that's going to set you back €1 million a year. There are differences of opinions between researchers and their service providers on the necessity of commercial services. And part of that is apparently ideologically driven. And I suspect that part of it is because we're simply no longer used as service providers to deliver that type of thing. This is slowly changing depending on the country that you look at, but ideology has to do with it. NRENs appear to be pretty well placed to do this for EOSC. And the reason for that is because to do a collective procurement, you need to have a legal link between the one doing the procuring and the one on behalf of whom you're doing the procurement. And the NRENs, through Géant, have that because we deliver the network to all the institutions. So there the links are there, and I haven't seen anyone who has the same reach. So unless something changes in the legal environment of EOSC, this is what you need. I think my time is nearly up. Is up, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah, last thing I'll say, we experimented with using vouchers for making services available, and there are some very annoying details there that you have to take into account. We had issues because of the particular legal situation of Géant, combined with the grant agreement, combined with the European VAT directive. And then when I try to dive too deeply in that, I always get a headache. With that, I think I'll close and I'll hand over to Serv. Don't press the red button.
Don't press the red button, okay. And what would be the, I think this configuration will, okay. And when I press the green button, I get my first slide? Yes, there it is. Oh, sorry, you're right, yeah. Hello, I'm Martin Brandt, I'm from SURF, and I work at SURF Research Cloud Group, which is a service we offer to the researchers in the Netherlands. And we have received from EOSC Future, we have received resources to give to our researchers in Oracle and Azure, and that's why I will present here how we did that, and also why they like to have the resources there. I will try to keep that in mind also as a point. Okay, this is the challenge we had, not only in this case for EOSC Future, but also for our general challenge. We have researchers, long tail of science researchers. They don't know much about computers. We have nice credits in EOSC Future, and we have clouds where we want to spend the resources. And yeah, how do we get all that together? Well, now I go back a bit to why we started SURF Research Cloud. SURF has its own cloud infrastructure. that we gave to the users. We opened up the management environment, OpenEBLA. People could log in, do everything themselves, but that didn't work well for researchers that weren't that tech savvy. So we said, okay, we will build a platform for access. And people like to work together, so we want to use federated identity and access management. And there are more clouds in this world, so we use Terraform because, yeah, our cloud might be full sometimes. Well, we built that platform and people can log in with us and with a few clicks can start a Galaxy or Jupyter Notebook on a reproducible research environment on the cloud. And they can directly use linked contracts and budget at Surf. And our idea is that they start indeed an IaaS component on the cloud, but they won't see very much of it. We will take care of hard disks, network, security settings, stuff like that. So it's really accessible for the users. And yeah, we also want to use the best resources. We have, at the moment, we have, I think, 60 A10s in our cloud. And that was nice, also 60 RTX 2080, so we have some GPU capacity, but then ChatGPT happened. And we are a shared infrastructure, so they were full. And we have, it's not HPC, it's not Slurm, it's not with jobs, they get a slice of it to use. So yeah, we use budgets to push them a bit around, but yeah, we're full sometimes. And they say they really need their A10s or even A100s. Also, we have nodes with a nice amount of RAM, but yeah, in public cloud, there's the commercial cloud, there's of course much more variety in the flavors that are available. So that's why we offer our own Surf Cloud. And a lot of people use that because that's funded by our own government grants, partially. They can also get more if they pay. But yeah, we also use the commercial cloud providers. We offer them. And people can share their tools. We have a catalog with recipes to create their cloud environment. And we also have research supporters using that catalog to create even simpler cloud recipes. So researchers only have to do 1 or 2 clicks to start it. So it's also a platform that can help research support. Okay, and we also work together securely. We don't have our own user management system. We use Surf Research Access Management, which is not a Surf service, which is based on the European ARC project architecture. So we invite people based on their identity and they choose how they log in, mostly with their institute ID. And then you can create groups that are used for authentication. And separately, we have our budget flow. So that's Research Cloud. Well, that's for us the solution because we have that platform. We got the EOSC Future grant. We can deploy machines on Microsoft, on Azure, on Oracle and Azure. So yeah, that seems to fit. But yeah, there's some more detail needing. If you look at the left side, you see that you invite people with the Institute ID for Surf Research Access Management, but then they don't have directly access to the credits. So we have a Surf financial system, a database where we can link identities to small parts of the grants, and people have that as a wallet in their Research Cloud. So we as Surf get the funding. We have an account in Azure or Oracle that we pay the usage, and people will get a connected wallet in Research Cloud to their identity to use. Deploying is done with Terra-based cloud connectors. So if somebody comes in and says, we have a new cloud that we want to connect, then we have to do for deploying, we have to write, almost every cloud is Terraform API, Terraform compatible, so we can just add a new small script, well, a number of scripts, and then we can push our EAS base infrastructure to a cloud, and then for the users, the clouds are similar. If you look at the surface, they can just look in a similar way as on every cloud. They just choose a different flavor. And we have a cloud accounting API. Every usage is tagged and pushed back to the Surf financial system and automatically deducted from the credits we have there from EOSC Future, for example. So that way, our system takes care of the accounting and of the deployment. So the cloud linking components, if a commercial or an institute cloud, we also have some institutes that have their own OpenStack cloud that we connected, that we need to write is only a Terraform deployer and an API reader to get the usage back. And I think I forgot one point, because it's not only the financial link we have with the clouds, of course, but because we are in the middle as an aggregator, we also have the processing agreements. We as Surf have a processing agreement with the commercial clouds and also with our members, which are the research institutes. So if a researcher comes in and requests cloud funds at our place to start their cloud environment, they automatically also are taken care of in the processing agreement and are allowed to use that cloud, and they don't have to do their own. You mean GDPR process? Yeah. So now I can show you, I don't have the button where you can see, but you have a button in our platform where you can say, I want to request a wallet. And then you can say, I want to request a wallet of the type, well, commercial cloud or Dutch government funding. We do have some commercial cloud funding in the Dutch government, but that's not a lot. It's a similar issue. And then they say, I will start my workspace, so my EOS environment. First, they will choose the group to work with, the federated identity grouping. People who can log into the environment. After that, they will choose their wallet. So in this case, I can choose between my internal project wallet that I have, which would be a government-funded one, or an EOSC Future wallet that I have. And if I select that one, then every usage of this VM and all other components will be automatically deducted from the usage in our system. And that means that Surf can also give back to the cloud providers information about, okay, the total budget has been used in this way by these and these institutes, maybe even for research type. But for the researcher, it doesn't matter. He just sees a wallet, and a wallet can contain products for different clouds. And in this case, he chooses the EOSC Future, for example. And then he chooses an RStudio or Windows or a Jupyter Notebook with CUDA. In this case, a Jupyter Notebook with CUDA. Then he will choose a cloud provider, and you can see here in the small blobs that there are different flavors in the different cloud providers. So if I would choose Surf Cloud, then I would only have A10 in the variation 1 or 2 GPU. We were quite full, so we didn't offer the 4 GPU version at that time. But if I would choose Azure, then I can also would choose a flavor with 2 times A100. And you only see the choices that your wallet has been prepared for. So if you don't have access to the commercial cloud funding, you would also only see the HPC cloud for Surf. Okay, and then you would say, okay, this is my more detailed size choice, 2 times A100, so I can really build a new ChatGPT. This is the choices I make. There's a submit button below there. And then after about 10 minutes, you will get this screen with a login button, and you can log into your Jupyter Notebook on Oracle in this case with a 2 times A10. based of EOSC funding. So for the end user, it's really only clicking a different cloud and a different wallet. And that's how we could incorporate this funding and extra grants into our system.
Can I add one sentence to that? Yeah. Because it dawned me that I think I didn't say something about how this fits into the bigger picture. So the bigger picture, as we've seen it, is if you want this collective approach to giving access to commercial services, first you have to get the agreements in place, and that we know how to play that game. We don't yet know how to assess demand for other service types, but it'll come, right? But you also have the problem, you have to get these agreements ultimately out to the end user. And if you then think back, what is the EOSC community? It consists of thousands of institutions. And if you look at the evidence that we've seen so far, so we've been at this since 2016 as an NREN community, and we're pretty well organized. So we've been at this since 2016, and we're now covering 900 institutions out of at least 5,000. That's taking us close to a decade. Now, imagine that that's the same for other service types. That's not really an agile process. So the thinking that we wanted to test in EOSC Future, and this is where the SURF project comes in, is the role of aggregators, because then you reduce the problem space to about a couple of hundred. National providers, thematic providers, right? If you hit the right sweet spot there, then the deployment problem of new agreements becomes a lot smaller and a lot more manageable. And it seems that that might actually work. And then the researcher goes to the right aggregator wherever they feel at home. And presumably the aggregator unburdens the researcher in actually using the agreements, because there's a lot of stuff behind it, the GDPR data processing, the technical stuff, the contracting, reading contracts. So all that stuff is now concentrated at one point that services a lot of researchers. And that is how we can see that turning into a process that moves forward with an acceptable speed and agility. But you need that engine to work, and it needs to be a collective effort to make it work. So that's the learning that we could figure out in EOSC Future.
Indeed, we have actual researchers who only said, yeah, I want access. And then their legal department got into contact with our department. But yeah, we're members, so they knew each other. So we had to do, but most of the contracts we already had in place. So we could offer the credits, yeah, relatively fast because we had all the connectors. Just make a special wallet with a special tag, and they could choose that one and a special flavor. So yeah.
And the other thing that you saw SURF do is they simplified the huge catalog of the commercial provider into something manageable. This was Azure, right? Or was it Amazon?
This was Azure and Oracle.
Azure and Oracle. So I don't know about the Oracle catalog, but I know the Azure catalog has like a gazillion items. It's like you drown in it. So if you just want to get on with your research, then you'd like that simplification being done for you, but at the same time have the opportunity to do it more complicated if you really want to go through the trouble. Yeah, and that's what we can facilitate.
Yeah, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm the last presentation before your lunch, so I will try to speed it up. And also in the beginning of this conversation, of this presentation, we realized we were three Dutch natives doing this talk, so that was not coordinated. But well, my name is Olaf Schoor. I'm head of procurement at Geant, and what Jan was telling earlier, that was actually what I've been doing over the last couple of years with some colleagues, is doing all these tenders. Indeed, the last version was started in 2019, and since 2021, all these framework agreements. And just to give you a bit of insight on that, we have 476 framework agreements underneath the whole EOSC marketplace to make sure that users can actually use those vendors. And these are all available via the marketplace at EOSC. So if you're under services, look for Okra, then you will find a whole list of providers that are available via the EOSC. We distinguish basically in two groups of cloud providers. That is not because we have added them there, but it's the choice of the individual organization. So all these entities or organizations are available throughout all of Europe. And we have a smaller set of cloud providers which have chosen to be available via one specific or some specific countries only. That's obviously because not of the nature of the cloud, because obviously also these websites can be accessed everywhere. But the challenge is, and Jan hinted on that, is that despite we're all in Europe and we're trying to be as well international as possible, but unfortunately tax legislation is still a country by country base. So if you're going to sell something in Europe, then you have to deal with VAT, and not all companies are eager or willing to operate internationally or not. So you have some cloud providers who have specifically chosen to be in one country or several countries only. So obviously I can't go into details of what all of the cloud providers are offering, but in the end, their whole portfolio is available via EOSC. There was just said here the difference between Oracle and Azure, saying, well, Azure has thousands and thousands of products in their portfolio, whereas the portfolio of Oracle is a bit smaller, but these whole portfolios are to use. And that is indeed storage, virtual machines, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. So all these services are available via the EOSC. But it's not only the services as such, but also the consultancy, and that is actually where SURF had also their presentation about the gap between the portfolio of a service of a cloud provider and the individual needs of a researcher can be, well, they not necessarily understand each other's language, so to say. And one of the learnings we have is that the reseller, so that is the company put forward by the cloud provider to do the billing and do the onboarding, etc. That reseller is a very important step in there, because if you have a reseller who's only interested in selling licenses, etc., they will never really understand the researcher that much. So there's a big gap to divide, and I think what SURF is also doing in their approach. But anyway, that consultancy service is also available via the frameworks in there. And yeah, what is available? So as Jan already said, pricing and discounts are favorable. But the maybe even bigger advantages are in data egress and ingress, because they are basically free of charge, or people don't get charged for getting data to and from the networks. All these cloud providers also working with marketplaces, so you can maybe have a very expensive license for a certain functionality already in your own cloud or in a commercial cloud, and you are free to bring that license from one cloud to the other. Obviously, we have peering agreements with all the cloud providers in place, so they are linking to our data centers, our network. And last but not least, and that's a very important one for the institutes that are using it, all the frameworks, all the contract work has already been done, and even to the fact that if you make a call off or actually engage with the cloud provider, you do it under your own legal law. So if you buy something in Spain, the contracts are governed by Spanish law, but if you buy something in Finland, the contracts will be governed by Finnish law, which obviously bridges the gap between the institutes and then researcher and the reseller. And we talk about commercial providers. Commercial providers are not always talking about us so much. It's a business with high volumes, and we even spoke a cloud provider once saying, well, if your turnover is less than 30 million, we're not going to look at it because it's not worth it. Because of the nature of the clouds, it's hard to make it bespoke. And we, as in the EOSC community, we like to think, well, we make something bespoke for our EOSC platform, or we ask suppliers to go through via APIs or whatever. It's not that easy to convince a supplier to participate in that if it's not clear for them what their financial gain is, because in the end, investments in time, etc., at cloud providers will always being looked at. Well, is it favorable for us to participate in here? There's also some competition laws that even if there's a larger cloud provider, they would nearly always go to resellers. That's because of competition laws that also are applicable for cloud providers. So it's not always easy for them to just dive into that, because if they don't account for their reseller markets, they will alienate their resellers to them. The GDPR at the moment, it's a bit of a one-size-fits-all approach we have been doing, but over time, we are expecting that that GDPR, but also data sovereignty, is going to be a more important part in this area. And it's also a question we need to ask ourselves, because we are very aware of the fact that there are big discussions going on saying, well, can we somehow favor European cloud providers versus the large American scale cloud providers? Jan just shared something about the trend in turnover. So I don't know, 8 years ago, the turnover was 0. So we started from scratch. We're now nearing 130 million a year, I believe. So if you keep following that line, in a couple of years' time, we're going to probably spend €1 billion worth on cloud services at mainly American hyperscalers. And the question is, well, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? There are strong voices who would say, well, yeah, you should favor European cloud providers. Yet that might be a very worthwhile task or aim to pursue. But the reality is that we do not see a lot of demands going to European cloud providers. When people are interacting, they will more often than not choose a solution from the American cloud provider. So at one hand, we can say, well, look at European alternatives, and there are European alternatives available. We have all the larger cloud providers we have in Europe are also in the portfolio of EOSC. Yet we see that there is hardly any usage of them, and we have been trying to engage those providers in here and start asking to invest time to start speaking to researchers and start speaking to institutes, saying, well, they need to be aware of your offering, because otherwise you will never get through there in their door. So that is a challenge, and that is also part of, I think, the future requirements gathering. Because we started off with a kind of generic approach, saying, well, these frameworks were initially mainly focused at NRENT, and said, but you also have the obligation to offer your solutions via EOSC. 2 years ago, via Work Package 9, we just checking the time. Via Work Package 9, we reached out to EOS users saying, well, this is the portfolio of services available. What are you missing? Are there any specific needs you are missing? Because we have funding and we have the resources to run an additional procurement. But actually nothing really came out of that exercise. All the requirements we were getting back were quite generic cloud services like storage and virtualization, etc., already covered by the contracts we're having in place. But we're going to do that exercise again at some point in time, going back to the EOS community and asking, okay, are there any requirements on the cloud side you are missing, and if there is sufficient volume behind it, then we can start adding new procurements to that, and making sure that those needs are being met. All right, so I try to keep it as short as possible. We have 8 minutes left for the questions, right? Yeah, I'm finished, yes. Sorry?
Can I ask a question? You were mentioning European cloud providers as SURF and our system. Yeah, we don't care whether the cloud provider, well, in theory, technically, we could attach to European cloud providers, and I think our researcher wouldn't care where the A100 is, as long as they could use it. But the future grants we got were Oracle and Azure. And when I was at TNC, there were Google, Oracle, Azure, and AWS. So, yeah, doesn't these systems want our our usage? Because we could write, yeah, I showed on my sheets. It's a few components, and we could add the T-Systems cloud or the other European cloud. So,
yeah, it's a really to do as well. So we invested a lot of time actually trying to engage with the likes of T-Systems and Orange, OVH, other European cloud providers, saying, well, your business is not coming automatically. You have to do something to introduce people to your portfolio. If you are saying that you're on par with AWS and Azure, then you can say that, but you also need to invest in that. And we see there's a mismatch there. That's, if you look at the large cloud providers, they dedicate really teams. They dedicate teams to universities and to researchers, and we just don't see that behavior from the European cloud providers yet. Yeah.
If I may ask a question which has come in through the chat, which is, what about ownership and personal data protection and US cloud services?
I mentioned the GDPR, and of course, in our contracts, we made sure that all these contracts are compliant with all legislation in Europe. Also, when I'm not going into too much detail because otherwise this takes too long, but you saw all these cloud providers on the screen. There are cloud providers that have like specific ISO classification for storing medical data, etc., etc. So dependent on the functionality you require when it comes to storing your data in Europe, storing sensitive data as medical data, etc. There are cloud providers there who have tailored solutions from it, and via EOSC Marketplace you can actually make a drill down to the requirements you need per cloud provider. So if you are wanting that your data is being stored in Europe, that it's sensitive data, that it's personalized data or medical data, you can drill down and come to the solution that fits your needs.
For ownership of data, we make sure in the contracts that this is no issue. right? And this is the power of the collective action. We could also do that for free services, for example, for Google. If we as a community decide, you know, we want better terms and conditions for the free usage of that, we could potentially do that. And for the GDPR, at the moment, the contracts don't specifically mention it, so we're basically relying on the fact that every supplier needs to be GDPR compliant. But there are knobs that you can turn in favor of the supplier or in favor of the consumer. And we're trying to figure out how do we do that so that those benefits go more towards us rather than the supplier. So for example, the warning time for a data breach. The supplier obviously wants that the majority of that time is with them. But if they use all the legally allowed warning time before you send the warning, hey, we've had a personal data breach, before you send that to the data authority in your country, if they use up all that warning time, we have no time left. So we'd rather have all that time. So that there are some things that you can do there, but then you have to dig quite deep.
Can I add one? We also go around this, well, not around, about this by using European data centers only, and so the data doesn't leave the zone, and the European versions of Azure and Oracle, so the European offices. Yeah, because it's always where you lay the layer, because even if you go to a European cloud provider, probably the chips will be Chinese. And I know that UOI has built most of the T-Systems cloud. So yeah.
No, it's an evolving subject, yeah.
Hi, my name is Sebastian. I work for EI and I do community support. So I was wondering, once you get researchers, when you give them access to commercial providers in the cloud, who provides support to the researchers? I mean, because we in EI, we find people who are very beginners and also very experienced. Those experienced users, of course, they are autonomous, right? But I would say that 80% of them are starting to use cloud services for the first time. So they struggle to get started, to make efficient use of infrastructure, right? So in that sense, I don't know what's the support that you give to users after they have been granted access to one of the commercial providers.
Yeah, that is a known issue. That is what I also said. There's a big gap between the researcher and a cloud provider. And if you don't have something in the middle, they don't understand each other. So from let's say our backend, so to say, these all framework agreements are supported by a contract management group. So basically that is the first layer. If you have issues with a contract, etc., so via your institute, you can reach out at people who actually are in touch with all these suppliers if there is an issue, and they also can help you with, well, the first steps and getting the right consultancy in place. It depends a bit on a country, because yes, it is cloud, but especially towards the billing, etc., it remains a bit of a country by country specifics. And one of the requirements in the tender was that in countries, people need to be able to provide local support, because, well, English is here and widely spoken language. But if you go into certain universities, then it might be a bit trickier to do everything in English. So all these cloud providers do have the ability to offer local support with local consultancy people just to overcome this issue.
So at the end of the day, we can only facilitate this. At the end of the day, it is the institution using the agreement that needs to figure out what is the right mix of doing this. Some have local specialists, others need to hire consultants. Sometimes you can get by with a one workshop. So it's your local choice how you serve that, and we try to provide the best hooks for you to do that. So that's why it's a complicated exercise. We could also have kept it a lot simpler and say, we're looking for 3 major European resellers to do this. Yeah, and then if you want to have Amazon and you're in Moldova, you get Amazon from Rackspace saying, no, we're not going to come to you. You'd like to have a local. So
Maybe it's also ahead it as part of this whole community. I think in the end it's a bit more of a federated approach. We are facilitating it, but we don't make any technology choices on behalf of people we don't know, because obviously we can't do that. So we're trying to facilitate as much as possible, and yeah, and we are learning on the fly basically. Yeah.
Two questions here, so yours first.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Picard. I'm with a large research infrastructure in the social sciences and humanities, Claire and Eric. And my question is really provocative. I don't expect a real answer because we'd be here for a long time. But the focus today, I understand, is commercial providers in EOSC. Turning that a little, extending that a little bit and looking at commercial services and EOSC. It'd be interesting to explore how the EOSC ecosystem influences the evolution of commercial services and what it does for companies trying or trying to look at innovation as an opportunity, working with companies, particularly in digital transformation programs and projects in different countries, which is a big, as you know better than I do, is a big challenge because of the gaps you mentioned and the history and more so in certain domains than others, but continues to be a real challenge.
Well, of course. Well, it was not part of. Well, it was part of SURF's presentation basically. But there has been funding, so the funding was for researchers, obviously, to do their research and getting them introduced to a commercial cloud, so to say. It always also works the other way around, because the idea behind that funding is also to stimulate a European environment for businesses or SMEs to start learning to engage with research. And well, this sounds a bit like a broken record, but we mainly see that these large providers have sufficient resources to do that, and smaller suppliers struggle with it because they need to go through quite a steep learning curve to understand needs of researchers, and they maybe lose 1 or 2 or 3 tenders in a row, and then they lose interest, and then we lose them. And that is one of the tasks we see for ourselves, is also taking over these smaller SMEs and the European industry aboard. And I think that's cloud and commercial cloud and private cloud can perfectly coexist together. It just depends on whichever circumstances you make your best connection.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, so this session was about providing access to commercial services for public sector researchers, and you're flipping it around and you say, well, how can EOSC help commercial suppliers to basically develop their products? You could have a conversation with her. She's looked into that. We've looked into that with Earth observation services, where it was an explicit goal of the European Commission to stimulate the formation of a viable market of service providers that make it easier to use Copernicus data. There are interesting things that we can do there, also from a collective agreement point.
We see it with data spaces now. We are also experimenting with data spaces, how to procure them, because nobody knows, basically. Nobody knows really what a data space exactly is, how to define it, let alone buy it via a European tender. So that is a bit of it's a challenge at the moment.
What? What I also see in the Netherlands, that actually the big providers know how to find the researchers to work together, because even around the SURF organization, which could be used, Google has contacts with hospitals and also humanities to set up projects, so they know how to find the researchers, because they know that will promote a project. But it would be nice to give that structure through EOSC, indeed.
So I'd like to give them one more question.
Well, first I would like to comment that this session has been oriented to explain some of the cases of the commercial entities on the provider side, and maybe what you were suggesting is how we could face the challenges of these companies on the demand side. So consuming services from EOSC. And for that purpose, what Jan mentioned is that in our case, we are operating the EOSC Digital Innovation Hub, that the main purpose is facilitate the access to different EOSC resources to companies, mainly SMEs, startups, spin-offs, that may require different services, and we help them in this digital transformation and digitization, and somehow help them to grow. And this is this type of impact that also the European Commission is requesting for the growth of Europe and the economy. Okay, so we can have a chat later. I would like to ask something, and it's related to, well, it's Lisa Kawé from EI Foundation. So I would like to ask about the accounting and invoicing. Because at EGI, what we see is that working in a federation, we need to struggle with different type of accounting and invoicing from different providers. And could be expected done from the experience of Giant running these procurement activities with commercial providers. Could we learn somehow of these commercial providers on how harmonized an invoicing system, because in the same way we receive at home the invoicing of internet and the heating, electricity, and so in a monthly basis, we understand easily how we spend, how much we consume, and is, let's say, harmonized between different providers. Is this still something that we could, let's say, expect from your experience working with commercial providers to learn for the public entities?
This is something that SURF, I think.
We have that for the usage. We get the usage back from the commercial cloud on the SURF subscription, and then we get it back in our system and we link it again to the users, so they really see their usage, their own usage, and we take away the cloud because we can tag it per user, what they've used, and then pick it up, the core hours and storage gigabytes and everything, and push it back to our central accounting system, which also has the accounting for our own cloud and supercomputer. And then the user can see, oh, I've spent this much on Azure, I've spent this much on Oracle, I've spent this much on the Dutch supercomputer, HPC, I've spent this much on the Surf Cloud. And the other way around, Oracle can come and say, or EOSC Future, not Oracle, because we don't give access to them, I guess, but if Future can say, oh, we gave you this money, then we can say, okay, we have this usage. So we have abstracted it away a bit, but I have to say, we only give out IaaS at the moment, and that makes it more easy. And in the Research Cloud case, the end user doesn't get an account on the commercial cloud, but SURF does, and that's how we handle this. So we have a big simplification, but yeah, we could extend that system indeed, and do it for other services as well, as long as you tag it.
I think our time is up, right? So I'd like to thank everyone for their attention. I'd like to make a closing statement, specifically targeting the EU representative that is here. And that is about sustainability, right? So at the moment, as far as I'm aware, there is no project call that continues this line of work. The Giant community has picked up the responsibility for continuing a collective procurement of infrastructure cloud. So that is being put on a sustainable path within our community, but we haven't done that for anything else. So that means unless our community decides to pursue that, or there is another signal to put in action some action, quite likely that is not going to happen. And for our community to pursue that, it would be quite handy with a signal somewhere. We know how to do it. We even have a hunch on how to put this on a sustainability track. But a signal to focus our attention, that would be welcomed. And obviously, we'd also welcome money to facilitate that. Thank you.